Grillo. I started to wonder, what kind of man is this? I never thought an artist, a painter for emphasis, can be little dressed without splash of paint on his body. Grillo professional journey. Although most of the discussants at this gathering have so much to say about Yusuf Grillo, Grillo is one of the most documented artists of his era. But for brevity, Yusuf Adebayo Cameron Grillo was born in the cosmopolitan Brazilian quarters on Lagos Island on the 16th December 1934. From birth, he was exposed to Brazilian art forms, which was exhibited in the architecture, signally cornice, fringes, mollies, which was carefully made by bricklayers. He must have seen artisans working when he was young, which must have subconsciously fueled his creative life. Growing up and schooling, he acquired some artistic training from the doyen of modern Nigerian art, and Onobulu, and also had some stints with some artists in Lagos in the likes of Akinlala Shekon and J.K. Oye. All this influenced him to shape his career before proceeding to the Nigerian College of Art and Science, now Ahmadu Bello University. While in the college, he was one of the first friends labeled as Zarian rebels because their kind of artistic expression. The other three were the Masonwoko, whose style was after the knock art, Uche Okeke, who was using the woolly body of the Igbos as his means of expression, and Bruce Onapapeya, the erudite printmaker. Today, Grillo was able to create a niche or style for himself with a kind of painting different from the standard oriented taught by Western-based art schools. His use of linear geographic elongated forms, similar to the Yoruba traditional wood carvers and Erebeji. His whether formal education helped him, his canon, to slightly deviate from the traditional carvers. Police and power play. One of the great assets that happened to modern Nigerian art was Yusuf Adebayo Cameron Grillo. As if Providence knew ahead of time, he was one of the survivors of the Lalukon disaster of 1957 that claimed the lives of his other classmates at the Nigerian College of Art, Science, and Technology, Zaria, now Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, leaving him as only student in his class. The accident was documented by Pafa Shui painting on display at the Tafa Gallery at the Adeni Jones, Lagos. I saw him when I was there. Right from his days in Ahmadu Bello, Grillo has been into politics, being the secretary of the Student Association formed in the Nigerian College of Art and Science. The club that was formed had a way of exhibiting their own drawings, which was not in conformity with what lecturers who are predominantly Europeans taught them. On graduation, Grillo was employed by the Federal Ministry of Education and was deployed to the Yaba Technical Institute, where he worked with Paul Mount, training young generations of artists from ministries, companies, and private individuals that yearn for for upward movement in their workplaces. Some of these notable products were late Erabo Emokwai, Sir Victor Wafo, and Abayon Baba, to mention a few. When Paul Mont left Nigeria, Grillo became the head of the department. Later, the institution was upgraded to a higher status to award students with ordinary national diploma and higher national diploma. Professor Grillo, in conjunction with Papa Agbabiaka, another Zarian product, developed the curriculum for both the ordinary and higher national diploma for the art and printing department, which was later became the template used in all the polytechnics in Nigeria. In 1975, with the mass retirement of many top-level officers, Grillo was appointed as the acting registrar for the college. This must have been a high regard for his astute track record as an administrator. In 1981, the department was upgraded to a school of art, design, printing, Grillo as the director. In 1964, Grillo was one of the founding fathers of the Society of Nigerian Artists and was the chartered secretary, a post he occupied for more than a decade before passing the baton to Professor Wangoje. His influence in the society and artistic sector earned him great respect and direct access to the Minister of Information and Culture, Anthony Nahoro. He was the president of society, enjoyed direct access to the Dan Barrack seats of the military head of state that the fund used at the art sector of Festa 77 was disbursed under his influence through Yaba College of Tech. The society was fully in charge of the artistic sector during the first act. The society collected, evaluated, and paid the artists whose works were collected. Finding his feet at the college and international scene, he was appointed United Nations Commissioner for Cultural Property in Africa for International Society of Education through Art. This paper would not have been complete without mentioning the fact that as one entire Yaba College of Technology, you think that the only course was art. As student works are, were in every nook and crannies of the college. Students with their easels are seen everywhere, painting, drawing the landscape of the college. In actual fact, if you study art in Yaba until recently, I don't know if they still do it, it is mandatory for you to draw or paint the Presbyterian Church at Yaba, the National Theatre, and many other notable landmarks in Lagos metropolis. Students draw and paint on the site with their easels, which is an attraction seeking to the general public. Professor Grillo was quoted to have used this as a powerful advertising tool for the department with the daily engagement of art with the public. It was easy to drive home the need for more space to accommodate the teeming population of the departmental school. So when funds came for the government, Grillo who was at that time the vice rector, Providence has again positioned him to swing the ball for the direction of the art complex. In conclusion, Grillo, as a non-conformist to his European lecturers' expectation, as it is said in his to be the first departure from follow, like fella will have said, follow. So you they follow, you block eye. You they follow, you close your ears. But Grillo was not like that. The monumental contribution of Grillo to art in Yaba College of Technology was unprecedented, not only to the art committee, but the college at large. Going by the general belief in Nigeria, funds were released for promoting science and engineering. But for art to be at the center stage of government spending to erect that Ganjati building called the Grillo pavilion there, you know that this man must have been politicking seriously. Incidentally, at the time that thing was being built, the rector of the Polytech of Yaba College of Tech was an accountant, and I'm sure he would have loved to build his own, because the only building that was standing in Yaba Tech then was the engineering block. And if you know Yaba Tech very well, you know that the two are not the same. The art block in aesthetics, in beauty and functionality is way, way ahead of the engineering block. So when money came, I am sure the rector then, that's Mr. J.M. Okufi, would have loved to build the money where he came from. Another thing I want to stress here is that Grillo, great vision for the grandeur masterpiece building, edifice, was found in no other place in Nigeria. Even up to now, most art schools are struggling to have a space. I am not condemning or comparing anybody. I happen to be a student at a university where the vice chancellor, the deputy vice chancellor, were all artists. And it never dawned on them to have a structure, even a small building, where they were building for other artists, faculty of law, faculty of medicine, faculty of this. But up till now, the art department do not have a structure of its own. And the two heads, and not now that there's no money or there are protocols for spending money. It was at a time when the school was building these new faculties, but art was omitted. Let me conclude by celebrating the vision of Grillo that moved the School of Art, Design, and Printing from a one-story building. I don't know, that's where we started from in Yaba Tech. It was a single block, and then from there we moved to this one. It was later, by Grillo, make sure it became a two-story building. It used to be just one floor. While I was there, it was after we left that they had the additional block on top. And then moving from there to this particular new building, you will know that the man had a vision. He had an insight, and his unprecedented recommendation, borrowing a leaf from the lifestyle. I want to encourage artists to go beyond their studio practice into mainstream administration so as to let the largesse of the central government trickle down to the art community. And we shouldn't. Yoruba will say, Pinre, Lare, Shebibi Oba wa nibe, lo le sobe. For those of us who do not speak Yoruba, I will try to translate. Cut it well. Divide equally. It is only when you are there. For the artists to enjoy all of us, especially the young ones coming behind us, let us go beyond the studio. We love locking ourselves up in the studio. Let's get out and be in the mainstream like Pa Grillo has done. May the soul of Yusuf Adebayo Cameron Grillo continue to rest in place. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Pam, for that scholarly paper on Yusuf Grillo, politics and power play in Nigerian arts. Because of our time, we move straight to the next paper by Professor Dele Jegede. It's going to be delivered live via Zoom. Dele Jegede.
Distinguished delegates and special guests, the cardinal objective of this conference is to stage a world-class conference with in-depth discourse.
Well, I guess I have to manage the intrusion that continues to disturb my thinking. Let me start by thanking Morayo and all those who are in the Grillo Art Limited for this opportunity. And to turn the Grillo residence into a resource center is a very plausible kind of move that I want to applaud. But before I go further, I need to be frank by saying that mine is not a paper. I'm not presenting any paper. I'm not interested in rehashing what we already know. And in fact, in the last 2 hours or so, we have listened to very interesting presentations. I would like to, can somebody please stop these people in the NBA?
That will birth a democratic transition from one elected president to another for the 5th time in the 4th.
What I'm interested in moving on today is ideation. I'm interested in us turning this platform to one that begins to look at Grillo in the next century. I appreciate the inputs of previous presenters, particularly Pafashi, whom I very much respect. And in fact, without him and the Ministry of Education in those days, many of us would not have had the opportunity of completing our education in Zaria. So to talk about ideation is to be very precise, is to move forward and to begin to look at what exactly are the possibilities of entrenching this particular idea pertaining to deathlessness, the idea of deathlessness, immortality, which is what I'm particularly interested in, talking about Yusuf Grillo. I'm interested in entrenching his own brand and perpetrating that. And so I come with what I would call the Grillo project. The Grillo project. The aim is to place his name in human consciousness in perpetuity. We can talk from now till eternity about him. Books have been published, articles written, and I've done my little share of that. But I'm particularly interested in moving Grillo forward. I'm particularly interested in getting to a point where his name becomes synonymous with Nigeria, with Africa, with art, which is what he stood for. So my proposal is that we brainstorm here on ways to consolidate Grillo's work, to perpetuate his presence, to immortalize him, and to further globalize and venerate his name. That is what the Grillo project is all about. But first I ask, what was he known for? What was Grillo? What is Grillo known for? Before I add my own ideas, let me also say that according to Pafashi, he's a man of peace, love, and goodwill. He himself has said that he is an introvert, and all of us will agree with that. One thing that I have personally observed is that in addition to being very humble, I've never seen him wear any bling bling. He's not the one to glamorize himself. He's a family man, a very religious person. And as I have had opportunities to participate in his Islam celebrations, I can now say that it makes sense when I understand he established the Organization of Islamic Christians. And you can see the sense of humor there. But what was he known for? For art education, for leadership, humility, inclusiveness, and religious tolerance. So, to be very brief, what I'm proposing here is that the Grillo project be realized through the establishment of an endowment in perpetuity. And those who are in the know would recognize that that would be the foundation for moving forward on the ideas that I'm here proposing. And the goal is to raise over a specified period, say a 5-year period, the sum of $6 million, $6 million US, or roughly 2.5 billion naira over a specified period, either 3 or 5-year period. If you thought that I was daydreaming, you might be right. But that is the platform, that is the conditions that always allow people to do what ordinarily would have been considered impossible or unattainable. So I am proposing that Grillo Incorporated or the Grillo Committee, Grillo Art Limited, move to put in place a committee that will include quite a number of people, reputable bankers, for example, accountants, public relations experts, legal luminaries, community folks, artists, art collectors, news media, members of the family, and those in the diaspora. At least that committee could include many more people, but the idea is to populate it with a diverse array of people with expertise in ways that would allow the project to move forward. And that committee will work out the modalities for accomplishing the goals and objectives, and may redesign the goals and objectives without vitiating the overall principles, which is to consolidate Grillo's deathlessness. And so, briefly, I'm proposing a few projects, and that will be the key presentation that I have. These are preliminary proposals, of course, but funding will be derived from interest accruing from the endowment. So fundraising becomes quite important in this regard. And so I'm proposing annual fundraising events to add to the purse. The project will be pitched to several constituencies, organizations, and interest groups, including the Lagos state government, creative societies, including the SNA, master artists, established artists, galleries, collectors and art aficionados, architecture firms, banks, particularly the first bank where Grillo had several three-dimensional works on display at the Marina branch. Also Zenith Bank, UBA, and several other banks. There are 23 commercial banks in Nigeria, and so you have a whole list to go through. Also make the pitch to notable personalities, political or politicians. I have in mind, for example, the politician Femi Gbajabiamila, and everybody recognizes him, but in his capacity as somebody representing, I think it's the Surulere area, but at least Lagos, he should be contacted, in my own opinion. Of course, the governor, whosoever that governor of Lagos State is, currently is Sanwo-Olu. Appropriate sectors in the Lagos state service, Femi Otedola, for example, Falawiyo, Folorunso Alakija, Tony Elumelu, Mike Adenuga, Coca-Cola Nigerian Breweries Limited. The list is endless of people to be solicited, and it has to be done professionally. I'm not suggesting or proposing that somebody pick a phone and call ABC. I'm suggesting that there be, the committee should have its own letterhead, little things that can be done, and then the chairman of that committee and the secretary will do the soliciting. And then exhibition of sale of artists' works donated, and probably from the Grillo collection also. So the idea then is to spread the gospel through meeting the Lagos state government in particular with a few asks. I think very seriously that if a presentation were to be made to the Lagos state government, by virtue of the fact that Yusuf Grillo is one of the foremost Lagosians, that particular thread can be, pursued. One, to name Lagos State University of Education after Grillo, so that it becomes the Yusuf Adebayo Grillo University of Education. Yeah. 2, name a major street or major streets after Grillo. In Ilupeju, Association Avenue, for example, Surulere, Maryland, Ikeja, or downtown Lagos. 3, contributions to the 5-year 2.5 billion fundraiser from the Lagos State government. And then 4, these are 4 key ideas that I want to put forward. The 4th one is to create a Grillo monument in Ikeja or Onikan or both. So, among other things, the committee should establish a Grillo Prize in Visual Arts that is worth not less than 250,000 naira for the most productive graduating students in select institutions. I have 5 selected right now, suggested: Zaria, Ife, Benin, Nsukka, and Yaba. There are several universities, of course, in Nigeria, and so the committee can decide to increase that as time goes on, and as funds are made available. We have 49 federal universities right now, and 57 state universities and 111 private universities. So there is quite a whole list of institutions that can be made to join. In other words, proceeds from the endowment fund should be used to create what will become, in my own opinion, the most sought after prize in departments of art in those institutions that are selected. That is Zaria, Ife, Benin, Nsukka, and Yaba. Establish, that is item 2, establish a Grillo endowed chair at Lagos State University of Education in Janiki, and also at Yaba College of Technology. And then annualize student art competitions at the tertiary levels. These are key ideas. Like I said, I am particularly interested in ideating and in hopefully beginning what might be a movement that would perpetuate the Grillo myth into the future, so that we would have news stories to add to it, and hopefully benefits generations yet unborn. Thank you.
Would not be complete without highlighting the role of Lagos State in the advancement and development of legal practice in Nigeria. For decades now.
Before we go to the next presentation by Sabi, I know you're going to be next. Yeah, you will observe that, or let me say personally, I find it very heartwarming that Professor Dele Jagede is able to present this paper all the way from the United States of America. But not just that, but for the fact that from his own testimony, he has been with us since the beginning of this session. He stayed on Zoom, started with us, and listened to all the presentation that has been done here today. That is really very heartwarming. And I will leave the work to the rapporteur that we have here to bring out the key points. But I just observed that he reminded us of the importance of funding in the Grillo Arts and how we can go about it so as to make it into foundation and then, make it bigger than whatever we have imagined. Funding is so key, and we have to keep that in mind. So, Sir Bernard, I know your presentation, sir.
Well, good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and members of the press here present. Well, I'm highly delighted to be one of the discussants this afternoon. Coincidentally, I spent a total of about 50 years together with somebody I can refer to as Daddy, Yusuf Adebayo Cameron Grillo. I'm not going to bore you much with the schools he attended. As he went to primary school as also place, secondary school as also place. He went to the university, Ahmadu Bello University. Some of these things are already in the public domain. And of course, it was mentioned earlier in one of the speeches we've had today. But maybe for the benefit of the students amongst us, you never can tell where you need such information, or where you need to use such information. I just, in brief, mention what Professor Grillo did, especially when he was at Yaba College of Tech. He was drafted to Yaba College of Tech around 1962, but before then, he was working at King's College, maybe like Mr. Oshinowo. He worked at King's College briefly before Mr. Paul Mount, who was a major lecturer at the place they call Yaba Technical Institute then. That's the Yaba College of Tech now. He was drafted because of the interest and the skill he found in Professor Grillo. That's to say that before Professor Grillo joined the place, Mr. Paul Mount knew him all the time he was at Zaria. So shortly after he left Zaria in 1961, he was posted by the Federal Ministry of Education, who engaged him. Of course, it was very easy to get a job then. So almost as soon as he's finishing, he got a job with the Federal Ministry of Education to teach art at King's College. And he hardly spent 1 year there before Mr. Paul Mount requested him to be posted to Yaba Technical Institute then. On getting there, Professor Grillo showed the stuff with which he was made. He proposed the regulation of existing program in the institution and worked closely with Paul Mount, restructuring courses with new prerequisite qualification for would-be students. Specifically, they had ND program in mind, which is a 2-year program. And the prerequisite to that was supposed to be the West African School Certificate. And this was accepted by the governing council of the institution then. So he continued with his work, like we have been told, from that 1962 till 1987, when he retired. During his period, like I earlier mentioned, ND was introduced, and by 1972, HND program was introduced into Yaba College of Tech. I happened to be the second set of the HND students of Yaba College of Tech in 1973. Luckily, I could see 1 or 2 members of the pioneering HND program in our midst here this afternoon, Mr. Rahul Thompson. So Professor Grillo was actually the head of department and later the director of school for more than 20 years. By 1971, when I joined Yaba College of Tech as a student too, he was the head of department. And he was there. From there, he was moved to the position of the director of school when the School of Art, Design, and Printing was created. He was the first director of school, and he headed the school till 1987 when he retired honorably. Let me briefly talk about Professor Grillo's message. In other words, message in some of his works. There are some of his works that have been projected earlier on. These are some of the works I brought for the benefit of those of us who are not familiar with Professor Grillo's style, especially the students and those of us that are not in the arts here. You will see a lot of distinctive characters and probably colors in his style of work. Some of these things I'm going to mention briefly in this paper here before going to my relationship and what I stood to benefit during his lifetime. Professor Grillo's works and philosophical meanings. Grillo's paintings, which I want to discuss today, theoretically can be taken from the post-structuralism, which gives the audience power to be part of the interpretations of the works using the feelings and clarity of the aesthetic objects like the Ibeji as a look-alike image in his painting presence of the European culture and continue to worry about the safety of Yoruba, of the culture, in the face of European culture. His thinking seems to echo the poem of Gabriel Okara, Piano and Drum. Here, drum of the womanhood in the Yoruba culture. The colors used are simplified batik colors like the purple, green, and blue, signifying the dialectic discourse of the Yoruba and the Western culture. His paintings are not so much of the technical finish one would quickly notice in the Yaba school, but deeply seated of the Yoruba nation, to signify the artist's worries in the place of the Yoruba culture, in the hybridity of the African and the Western culture that was ongoing in the later 1960s and 1970s in Africa. Grillo's paintings subject matter represents the conceptualized on the Yoruba philosophy as an emerging contemporary or the modernity of Yoruba culture, focusing on the female figure in the face of the new adopted ways of life. One critical effort noticeable in Grillo's works is the attempt to reconcile the Yoruba aesthetic object with the feeling and craft of the Western draftsmanship that he must have acquired from Zaria. This subject reflects both sets and the Western drawing available in and a reflexive approach to the interactive complexity of Yoruba culture in fusion with the Western civilization. His focus on the Yoruba aesthetic objects can be likened to Anselm's thinking with pure shapes. A thinker, according to Anselm, a thinker must subtly control the relationship of his concept to the matter for which they stand in order to acquire sufficient generality. This concept must transcend the particular aspect of the experiences from which they are taken. But in spite of their abstractness, they must reflect the relevant features of their reference, unquote. His remarkable interaction with the past, fusing with the present, is a testament of the charge of the current flow of modernity of the Yoruba culture and the emerging Western ideology. But his methodology of this approach remains personal to Grillo's drawing and painting ability to showcase his critique of this phenomenon. Well, like I've earlier said, I will not want to bore you much about some of these technicalities because this can easily be understood most likely by the people in the arts, especially creative arts. Now, let me go straight to my 50 years relation to Grillo. He was the head of department of art and printing department, Yaba College of Technology, when I enrolled to study fine art or general art in September 1971. His office was adjacent to our classroom. By construction, he had to pass through our classroom to enter his office. He was forced to see the classroom while going and coming from his office on a daily basis. He therefore does not have much direct dealing or business with a year one class. The tall, fine-looking, respected gentleman saw a lot, but pretended not to see much in most cases. When he stopped to ask questions, you just need to convince him that you know what you are going, and he moves on. At about 8 weeks of my stay in the college, he called me one afternoon by my name, and I was surprised that he knew my name already. He asked if I could go with him to his house to do some little jobs for him. I quickly agreed because I saw it as a great honor for him to have figured me out and asked him to come and help him in his studio. And like somebody earlier said, by then we were looking at the HOD. There was no director of school then. We were looking at him like a demigod. So it was a great pleasure for me asking me to come and join or come and assist him in his studio. So we both went to his house in his white Ford car, which was one of the biggest cars. His studio in an acre of land in his house, and that's at the Yaba College of Tech staff quarters. There in the studio, he showed me what he wanted me to do for him, basically to help I worked alone in the evening after lectures. Usually he will come again later in the day after I must have gone to my hostel to do some corrections. But he never told me there is a particular place I don't do well all through my working with him. Rather, he will gently come there, rearrange the mosaic tiles, and do the things it should be. It was purely a sort of apprenticeship program for me. And I was very glad he engaged me. And rather than me paying the apprenticeship fee, he will pay me with check for me to go and cash and pocket. I had the opportunity to work with him not only on mosaic tiles, but also on stained glass and some relief sculpture. I cannot forget he made clear one afternoon that I need to make sure I get my assignments done. And he didn't say more than that, but I could easily get the message that he is not the type you can miss later to say, oh, a lecturer failed you for whatever reason. He's indirectly telling me that he's not going to entertain such. So I got the message quickly. I learned a lot in almost 4 years of my working with Professor Grillo. That was during my ND and my HND program. The great opportunity I received placed me above some of my classmates, and the resultant effect was that I was able to do my HND immediately I finished the ND. In other words, I didn't bother to go for the 1-year industrial attachment. It was the general belief or the consensus opinion of the lecturers then that I could be given the opportunity to start right away. In other words, finishing my ND in June, and of that same year, I started my HND come September. Professor Grillo was a teacher, an administrator, a mentor, and a liberal father who will allow you as a student or a mentee to make mistakes in whatever form you want to. And he will allow you to do your correction by yourself by just pointing out a few things that will make you know that you are not on the right path. He was mathematical by nature, and that you will find in his approach to life and works. When at home with his children in the early 70s, he was down to earth with them, telling them African folk tales and stories with songs. He occasionally teased and joked with his children. His lifestyle in the 70s and thereafter was by far above his colleagues at Yaba College of Technology. He was highly respected among the staff. Most lecturers outside the School of Art did not seem to understand Professor Grillo's nature because he did not have much time to spend with them outside his office hours. You hardly saw Professor Grillo in any other attire than the French suit of color white, cream color occasionally, light gray and light blue. He was actually blessed because he was always on his feet and went about in his best cars. First with the Ford, a luxurious Ford car, and later Mercedes-Benz car. Prof was the first president of the Society of Nigerian Artists, a position he held from 1963 to 1978. During his tenure, he ensured that the visual art was placed in a place of pride and artists' voice was heard at the national and international level. He ensured that the structure and professionalism was put in place to support the national growth and development of the nation. This was clearly noticed during Festival of Arts and Culture, that's Festac 1977. This presentation will not be complete without the acknowledgement of Professor Grillo's great role in ensuring that the current architectural structure or edifice in the School of Art, Design and Printing was purely his making in the 80s. This was earlier mentioned too by my younger brother there. He occasionally hung out with some of his friends, and he loved to entertain and feast his friends during the layer period. He tagged this Organization of Islamic Christians, OIC, that was earlier mentioned too. This he did from 1971 that I knew him up to 2021 that he passed away. The only time we missed that was in 2020 during the COVID period. He was an epitome of humility, honesty, and integrity. He was more of a private personality and lover of music, of artists like Haruna Ishola, King Sonny Ade, Shina Peters, Fela, and some high life music. He was there for me in 1977 when University of Lagos Faculty of Education was in doubt if HND holders will be able to cope with the Postgraduate Diploma in Education, PGDE program. I completed the program with flying colors, thereby opening the doors for subsequent HND holders interested in the program. This was due to the recommendation from Professor Grillo that allowed me in. In all, I'm one of those that sees Professor Yusuf Grillo as a man made larger than his frame, that is larger than life size, and he was a tower of strength in all aspects of life. He was very rich in all ramifications. He was blessed with children, all now matured, and honorable ladies and gentlemen. They were me to mention these people for the benefit of those who are not sure. Morayo happens to be the first born, followed by Bodunri. Boyega was the first boy, Ladi, and later Akin came in. We were all together all the period I was working in their house. So I knew them when some of them were like that. He was equally blessed with a highly devoted wife, confident, and epitome of motherhood. That is Elijah, or late Elijah, Saidat Iyabo Grillo, who equally retired honorably old age before he was called to glory, as for the husband followed. May their gentle souls rest in perfect peace. Thank you.
I know I will allow Balogun to take a few other recognition and then we'll go on.
Yeah, thank you very much. We want to quickly recognize the presence of some important dignitaries that just walk into the gathering. In our midst, we have a very important and an avid art collector. He is chairman, Board APSA Nigeria, Cabri Nigeria PLC, Secure ID Limited, Pantheon Partners Limited, And he's also an advisory, a member of advisory board, Yemisi Shillong Museum. We're talking about Mr. Abodeomen Sulaiman. Sir, you're welcome. And Miss Sue, I have my boss here. He's the Dean, School of Arts, Design and Engineering. Welcome, Dr. Eji Piers. Thank you.
We are almost landing up, don't worry. The art talk is why we are here. That is the way I see it. That is why we are here. But we are already running towards the end of it. We will allow our audiovisual people to project to us the presentation by Professor Jerry Buhari. Audiovisual.
Jerry Buhari is an artist, a lecturer, a professor of fine arts at the famous Abodeomen University, Zaria, Nigeria. And he's written so many papers and has attended conferences all over the world, workshops, and all that has to do with art. And they are the ones that are holding forth for the likes of Grillos at the Abodeomen University. Thank you. Audio.
I sincerely thank Grillo Art Limited for the privilege given to me to be a part of the first Grillo Memorial Art Talk. This is a recognition that I humbly appreciate and would ever cherish. In honor of the memory of this great man, I have deliberately decided to present only my portrait as identity of the voice presentation that I will make. Yusuf Grillo as man, as message, and as myth. The man Yusuf Adebayo, Cameroon, Grillo, is a personage of imposing physical height. His dark complexion and cool economical facial expression makes him appear like a living ancestor. His deep baritone voice and sonorous laughter echoes the presence of thunder. Yet, this man, who is essentially reserved, attended my first solo show in Lagos at the Italian Cultural Institute, Eleke Crescent, Victoria Island, on Saturday, 18th November 1989. Many who saw him whispered to me that I should consider myself blessed because he hardly attends exhibition social events. I was later to visit him at his home in Ikeja in appreciation for his presence. To find a man so simple, unassuming, and ordinary. The man Grillo is a teacher, educator, mentor, confidant, and friend to so many across ethno-religious and class divide. I recall how Jimo Akudo, the late Uche Okeke, Onobra pair, would speak glowingly of this legend, their colleague and friend. I also recall what late Michael Moige, my friend, and late Rashid Wadamasi, and the Chelerams, how they shared with me about the deep respect with which they hold this man, and especially the humanity Grillo shared with them. I can imagine today, as we're seated and reflect on this man, the incredible stories all of us would have encountered with this man. Each of us will reflect the musical tapestry and a luminous mosaic of the man. The message. I recall also that in 1996, when the National Gallery of Art, in collaboration with the Department of Fine Art, Abodeomen University Zaria, began to put together a historic project titled the National Symposium on Nigeria, along with a major touring art exhibition that took place in Zaria, Abuja, and Lagos, of the works of members of the Zaria Art Society. The exhibition was titled The Zaria Art Society, A New Consciousness. All the members sought direction and leadership. Delivery vehicle, safe and secure movement of their artworks. B, he needed an iron cast agreement that the works will return to all the members of the society 2 weeks after the exhibition. C, that there will be security provision of all works throughout the duration of the touring exhibition. Of course, this also included his demand that the works should be insured. These requirements set the standards for exhibition agreement between artists and organizers of art projects in this country. Another significant message that we could draw from the professional life of the artist is the few exhibitions he was engaged in. The length of time it takes for him to let his works go out of the studio. The message here is that a work of art takes time to mature, and that visibility does not define its success in an art career. Today, his works continue to be subject of scholarly research and sought after by collectors. What a successful artist in every sense of the word. In one of my conversations I was privileged to have with him, one comes away feeling intellectually dwarfed by the depth, the height, the width, and the length of his knowledge and wisdom. The singularity of purpose, conviction, and commitment to his art practice is driven by a personal philosophy rooted in solitary life that draws its nourishment and energy from the humanity around him, which today and always we will ever drink from. The myth, fame, famous. These are terms we use for stars, even art and artists. But what is fame? Fame is somewhat limited by time and often fades. With Yusuf Grillo, we come across a personality that exudes presence. His physical aura attracts and commands natural presence, attention, and timeless memory. These are some of the essential qualities that mark and make legends and icons. Yusuf Grillo belongs to this category of Homo sapiens. His artistic career oscillates between sketchbooks, maquet, canvases, boards, wood, concrete, and illuminating glassworks. Situated within deep, engaging Yoruba cultural heritage and spiritual repository, the myth becomes our myth and our wonder, yet simple and ordinary. Like the fight costumes, the man, the message, and the myth have finally come together in a triangular mathematical formula that connects us with each other at the bottom and points us all to the Creator. I thank you for listening.
That was Professor Jerry Buhari from Zaria. He actually wanted to be with us, but we had to persuade him to participate virtually, for the security of our nation today. We are going for the final paper to be presented by
Shortly, this session will round up. However, we still have room for goodwill messages, but possibly while refreshment is going on. Dr. Emmanuel Olakunle Filani is a Nigerian educator, an art educator, an artist, an administrator. His works are closely identified with the school of thought named Ism. Ism is an art movement that is based on the fusion of the designs, particularly from the Ife Art School, the Yoruba. He has written so many books. He's an art scholar, an art scholar. Kule Filani is well respected in the art balance. And there to this discourse session. Thank you, Kule Filani.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please permit me to just acknowledge the presence of very distinguished family members, friends, colleagues, and students of Grillo. Because of time, you will pardon me, from following the regular protocol. I understand that the time for the talk shop had dovetailed into the time for. I will just review things, hoping that another day we'll be able to do a more fleshy job. Within the context of the theme that says me,
looking at something, I'm looking at Yusuf Grillo, issue of cultural aesthetics and identity. I think within the two, we can capture the essence of his creativity. It is said that great artists are not revered only for their genius. They are equally venerated for their positive way of life. And I think apart from Yusuf Grillo's tangible realities in the visual arts, is typical, is living. The way he lived his life is also typical of a person that is worthy of study. The African society, when you make contributions to your society and you grow old and die, they often embark on the process of deification, thereby giving you a kind of immortality after death. I believe that this meeting today is the beginning of the apotheosis to deify our very great father, Yusuf Grillo, and therefore give him immortal life. I'm very pleased with what Professor Dele Jegede enunciated, as to how we could further engender and entrench his name in the sand of time, because he's actually worthy of such accolade. I will be touching on some issues of identity and artistic creativity. As we all know, there are different types of identity: cultural identity, which could be national, ethnic. Even people could say there is global identity. There is personal identity, there is professional identity. You have issues of gender-based that could be classified into identity, and issue of social and religious beliefs. All these are encapsulated within the cultural nuances of Yusuf Grillo's mover. As we all know, culture is a continuum with overlapping narratives and often defined by the exigencies of modernity, meaning that there are changing faces of basic indigenous principles and elements, thereby ensuring that culture continues. There's always these tensile strings of continuity that bind the past with the present. And for those who are culture conscious, but when you refer to an artist as culture conscious, it does not define the artist or the person to be a fossilized or somebody who is trying to crucify tradition. No, because culture lives. There is change and continuity. And so when we define Yusuf Grillo within the context of culture, we must understand that there are strings of continuity between the old, present, and Yusuf Grillo will be described as an African artist, a Nigerian artist, a Yoruba artist. All these, according to Anyako, is giving a conceptual qualification when you qualify somebody with a concept, an African artist, the Yoruba artist. That means that there are issues that relate to the person's work and the general qualifier, like Yoruba art. Grillo is typically a Yoruba artist in a modern time. And according to Lloyd, if you examine the forms and the content of Yusuf Gillo's work, then you begin to see those elements of culture that made him a typical Yoruba artist within the modernity that we experience today.